This is Hannibal here from thehannibaltv.com, and I'm going to do a review of the Randy Orton Broken Skull Session Shoot interview with Steve Austin that I watched over the past couple days on the WWE Network. I do think Randy Orton is one of the old schoolish wrestlers of today, and definitely one of the all time greats, one of the best from the modern era. He's from the generation slightly before mine as far as starting wrestling. They do about 4 Jack Daniels shots in this Broken Skull session and have a little bit of Steve Austin's beer. They basically finish off the Jack Daniels bottle that The Undertaker started, which I still have to watch the Undertaker episode. But they basically discuss that Randy Orton wasn't really a wrestling fan growing up. Didn't really follow his dad's career that much until high school. He became a big wrestling fan. He went into the military briefly, went AWOL, finally got released, was working at a gas station, and his life wasn't really going anywhere. So he asked his father to train him to be a wrestler, train with the father. Then the father made some phone calls to Tony Gurria, who I've interviewed on this channel, and a few other people that he knew that worked behind the scenes with WWE. They liked his look. They signed him right away, sent him to OVW. They talked about, and Jim Ross has to be one of the best all-time talent relations people. And just for the record, at one time he did recommend me for an NXT tryout, but they canceled that tryout. But the class that Randy Orton was in included Brock Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin, John Cena, so many guys that ended up doing well in wrestling. So they talked about what a great class. Batista was there that he grew up in. They did end up talking about his feud with John Cena, and he said he hopes that at one point he could have a match with John Cena, with Ric Flair as the referee, if he gets to be a 6-time world champion, because at the time of this, he was 14-time world champion, and Flair and Cena are tied at 16. So he would like to one day see who becomes the first 17-time world champion in a match with John Cena, with Ric Flair as the referee. I do agree that would be a good match. Is Randy going to wrestle this year? I heard that he might be back by WrestleMania. He's overcoming a major back surgery. He talks about, gives a lot of advice, talks about that he was very blessed that he was given a big opportunity at a young age, wrestling The Undertaker at 22. He talks about a big turning point in his career was the match he had with Mick Foley in Edmonton. That was a hardcore match. People saw that he was actually tough doing that match. He still kept the thumbtacks he was thrown into. Now, I remember the Raw the next night was in Calgary, and I was an extra on that Raw the night after that Backlash. And I remember everyone backstage was talking about that match that Randy Orton had the previous night. So I think that helped him backstage too, because I remember that was the main thing people were talking about from that Edmonton pay-per-view. And he talks about that it was a sold-out crowd and everything in Edmonton. And one thing I noticed when they're showing the clips of him from the early 2000s is you'd see the arenas with the 3 levels open and not blocked off. Now you always see the top levels usually darkened. Except for some cases. Now we're getting into WrestleMania season. But it shows that even after the Attitude Era, it took a while for the popularity to die down. He puts over The Undertaker for helping him, Triple H. I do remember, speaking of tryouts, I did have a tryout in Buffalo in December 2005 where I wrestled Sean Spears and he ended up getting signed from that match. But what stands out to me from that tryout is I was like the one guy from the tryout that actually stayed to watch the show because I thought it would actually help me, but I think it hurt me in the end. Because maybe they thought because I was hanging out backstage for the show, I was a prima donna or what. But they offered me the people running the tryout said you guys can stay back here and watch the show if you want. But why I'm bringing that up is his match against Undertaker was the main event on that show. And by the way, it was a house show and it had to have been close to sold out. And I remember that him and the Undertaker had a really, really good match for a house show, and the crowd was really into it. Then they went into the more modern stuff. He did tell a story that at one WrestleMania when he was younger, that he had partied the night before, like the day before WrestleMania, and he had missed. It was the one where his father got inducted into the Hall of Fame. And he had missed the practice the day before, and he was given 2 minutes to introduce his father, and he hadn't even thought about the speech before. So he said he was disappointed in himself that weekend, and they could have fired him, but they didn't. They kept running with him. He wasn't really punished or anything, but his punishment was disappointing everybody. And I can understand that. And I can understand why they pushed him. He does have a great look. He said in this, he's not a body guy. Maybe, yeah, he's more talented than just the physique, but he does have one of the best looks ever in wrestling. Maybe not a Batista-sized bodybuilder, but he was always lean and muscular. And as Steve Austin said, has like the male model look. They never asked him about the incident where I guess that led to them doing the pre-contract testing for Hep C, where Bob Orton bled in his match with The Undertaker that led to Bob Orton getting released and Johnny Ace getting heat because apparently Bob had told Johnny Ace prior to that match that he had Hep C or something, and The Undertaker only found out after. Randy Orton says that he got his RKO from Johnny Ace. Steve Austin does seem to be a genuine fan of his. One thing I'm taking out of all this is Steve Austin is a legitimate wrestling fan. And Randy Orton is very passionate about wrestling. He's clearly going to continue probably for another 5-ish years. And then he talks about wanting to be an agent in the future. Jamal, I don't really recall his theme song, to be honest with you. I heard it, but it doesn't really stand out to me. And you're talking to the wrong guy. I like the Dungeon of Doom themes and the Rougeau themes and the Ultimate Warrior themes. I even like Hulk Hogan's theme. So the themes of today, and I'm not dissing them. They're just not my taste. My music taste. Actually, I like pretty much all music, but there's no theme. Maybe I haven't watched enough that no themes really stand out. Is Big E coming back in the near future on a different subject? Not that I'm aware of. No. Anyways, interesting interview. I found the last part less interesting because I did still watch WWE until around 2005-ish. So I remember the early stuff of Randy Orton. I haven't watched it as much in the past 15 to 20 years. I do remember him the night after the WrestleMania in Toronto. He did have, I don't know if it was a dark match or a velocity match in Ottawa. On that show there, where he actually brings up, that's one more thing that I didn't mention. He brings up that him and Brock Lesnar were the first two called up from his class that ended up being one of the legendary classes. There hasn't been a class with that class's success yet since, and that was 20 years ago. But and he mentions driving with Lesnar on the road and them looking at each other and being like, wow, we actually get paid to do this. Like, it's a really cool job. So there you go. I recommend watching this. I haven't decided which one I'm going to watch next, but the Broken Skull sessions, so far I've enjoyed them. The only one I found boring and tapped out after a few minutes was the Sami Zayn one, but he hasn't had the adventures of some of these other guys like Randy Orton. He admits in this he was a partier, and at one point he had a wellness violation and was in a dark place. I've seen him backstage doing the last couple times I was backstage at the WWE. I was working arena security, smoking his nicotine vape. So it's like he's not one of these college graduate cookie cutter wrestlers. He's a legitimate wrestler to me and has like the old school personality. So good interview. Keep up the great work.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it and click the subscribe button to not miss